Good evening. Today is November 17th, 2022. The time is 7:27. This is the Historic and Environmental Preservation Board of Opa-locka. Meeting's called to order.
We have roll call.
Board Member Brown,
Here.
Board Member Alexander Van Meckel,
Present.
Board Member Francis McIntyre,
Here.
Board Member George Suarez,
Here.
Board Member Nikita Nixon, Board Member Romatt Ferguson, Board Member Nikisha Williams, Vice Chair Otis Alexander, Chair Makisha Finn. Attendance confirmed.
And we're going to have a moment of silence. Please stand. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Gregory Gay, Director of Planning and Community Development. We are short of a quorum at this particular point in time, but there are some things that we would like to discuss. So we're going to be taking the agenda slightly out of order. Mr. Alex Van Meckel will be chairing the meeting unless our chair arrives. And unfortunately, due to the fact that we do not have quorum, we cannot take any action items at this particular point in time. We are waiting for another board member to arrive. And at that point in time, should they arrive, then we will be able to move forward with the action items. So, Mr. Chair, if you would so mind, what we'll do is we'll go over the discussion and presentation items, which is item 9. Within your packet, you will see information regarding the Historic and Environmental Preservation Board workshop that we had on November 2nd. We did have board members that were a part of that particular discussion, and there were certain items that were actually highlighted as a part of that. The city manager also provided us with a memo to basically cover some of those particular talking items within that particular workshop. So I believe there is one board member that was not present at that particular workshop who may want to express some of their ideals and concerns as it relates to what the board was seeking to do in relationship to the historic preservation workshop. And just to kind of give you a narrative, the workshop was basically to look at opportunities to expand the historic preservation activities within the city of Opa-locka. There are presently 30 properties that have been identified as historic within the city. At least it's being registered as historic on our historic preservation listing. There are actually far more properties that could qualify to be declared as historic. And we're seeking opportunities and grants and funding to assist those particular property owners to help them restore their properties in order for them to potentially qualify as becoming a registered property within the city of Opa-locka. And that number of potential properties is actually probably I think it exceeds 40. We've been doing a cross-check with Miami-Dade County Property Appraiser's Office, basically making a determination of when certain properties were actually built. And the time period that we are basically hovering around is the time period from 1920 to approximately 1935, 1936. So if you have a property that was built during that particular time period and it reflects the Moorish Revival architecture, which was prevalent for that particular time period, there's a good chance that your property will qualify to become a registered historic property within the city of Opa-locka. And one of the things that we want to do is be able to assist those particular property owners. There are some other benefits that are associated with having your property registered as a historic property. There's actually some property tax benefits as well that are available, where you can actually have your property taxes reduced, at least from the city side, and also companion from the county side if you apply, to have your property taxes reduced because you are a historic property. So those are some of the things that we're basically looking to bring forth to those particular property owners. There are a few of those properties that are in disrepair right now and under private ownership. The city is seeking opportunities to either work with the property owner if the property owner is still on the property and wants to revitalize the property, or if they do not, if the city could possibly acquire the property, maybe have the property donated to the city, and the city can work with another entity or bring forth a new owner to look at restoration of those particular properties. So those are some of the ideals that were discussed. We're looking at different funding sources to assist with those particular opportunities as well. The state of Florida does have a grant opportunity where you can apply for dollars to assist with the restoration of historic properties. And even the city of Opa-locka, through our last budget, this particular budget year, we actually set aside some funding to the tune of approximately $100,000 to assist homeowners and property owners with modifications that they can make to those particular properties. Now, when you break it down, it's not a whole lot of money. We estimated that it would probably be somewhere between $4,000 to $5,000 per property owner, depending on the condition of the property. But with these other grant opportunities that are out there, that can actually be added on if the applications that we are seeking to apply for, if we are successful in bringing those particular dollars down, it increases the opportunity for the city to assist those property owners of historic properties. And last but certainly not least, through the city manager's office, we have identified some funding through the American Affordable Cares Act. This particular funding was funding that was associated with the pandemic, but there's greater opportunities to actually see if these particular funds can be utilized for historic preservation, because we know that people were challenged during that particular time period as it relates to making mortgage payments and things associated with that. So we're looking at all types of funding sources to help out property owners of historic properties. I don't know if there's any other members of the board that would like to add some things in relationship to what I presented thus far, or if the manager might want to have something to say. But Mr. Van Meckel,
Mr. Chair,
I'll pass it to you.
question, where would they go and find the application? Is it available where where would they go and find the application for historic board in order for them to get the tax credits? Is that provided on our website? Is it a way for the homeowners to get that information?
Through the chair, I'm aware that Miami-Dade County does have an application associated with reduction in property taxes on historic properties. Uh, As for the city's process, we have not fully developed that, but that is probably something that we will be proffering to bring forward to this particular board so that they will have some input as it relates to if there's any specific conditions that would need to be associated with that particular process. But we can provide you with a link to Miami-Dade County's application process. Mr. Chair.
I just want to thank staff for preparing this categorically organized capture of the notes that us board members had provided, just some long-term and short-term visions of what we would like to accomplish with regards to bolstering our preservation activities here in the city. To that effect, I was just curious to know if, in addition to this capture, if there's any specific or at least proposed timeline of events that we could look forward to in terms of any of the phases regarding when we would anticipate certain monies to be available, when the first phase of plaques would be issued, consideration of a phase 2 of homes that deserve designation and should also receive a plaque and ceremony. I wasn't sure if at this moment we had deadlines in place or a timeline that we could look forward to seeing.
Mr. Chair, at this point in time, we do not have those particular deadlines in place. We do anticipate probably by the first of the year in January, we will be able to bring forward to you a litany of those particular ideals and actually programming those particular things out. Of course, we just had the workshop, a few months, not even a month ago. So we're still developing some of that information and working through those things internally, but we will be providing that information probably over the holiday months. So come January, we'll be able to present that to you and be able to move forward with it from there.
Thank you.
So I have a question. With regards to homeowners or current homeowners who may have invested in their property and who basically have done some renovations, is it possible that they can apply for a retroactive reimbursement? So in other words, even though that we're trying to provide funds for future development, is there any way that people that have already invested in properties, if they can be reimbursed, if they're able to show proof and reasonable information that proves that they've spent money and invested in the property? Is that possible?
Mr. Chair, Darvin Williams, City Manager. That's a great question. And that is certainly something that we'd be open to, providing some support to homeowners of historic homes that have already made some investments into their properties. What I and the city administration are looking for is some structure, some guidance and some advice from this board as to formulate that process. To make some recommendations as far as how much money we should be giving to each home for restoration, for preservation, what is going to be the identification for plaque process, and if it be the recommendation of this board, what are going to be the criteria and process by which we would evaluate owners of historic homes and their investments that they made for reimbursement.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up on that statement, bringing to the fact that every historic home is unique. So the number amount will probably have to be, I guess, like around $20,000 or something like that per home, or based on what they plan on doing to keep them in that same charter that we're trying to keep them in, because it does get very pricey, especially for these homeowners that have historic homes that's trying to keep that property at the golden days.
Mr. Chair. Again, that's great input, and we are aware of how expensive it can be to maintain historic homes. However, the ability to be able to pay every homeowner $20,000 is not something the city's in a position to do.
We are looking to find what can we do as far as the external facade to maintain the appearance. Understanding that the bulk of some of the maintenance costs are actually for the internal, being the age of many of the homes and the infrastructure issues that a lot of them have. That's where we find a lot of the costs come from. So what we're looking to do is looking at the facade, the paint, the domes for those homes that have had domes, restoring those domes, replacing those domes, the archways, the doorways. Those are the things that we're looking to assist homeowners in doing so we can maintain the appearance, the street appearance of the historic homes. So that's really what we're hoping to try to kickstart here with this program, which is why you see the assistance range from anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000 at the max.
So, Mr. Chair, so we've worked with City of Fort Lauderdale CRA and also Broward County CRA. And the way that they approach their facade grants is that it's an 80-20 split. So basically the property owner is paying 20%, the CRA is paying another 80%. But then there's a cap on that particular full amount. The thing is that if we're saying that we're going to offer $10,000 to $15,000, when you look at that particular amount and you look at escalation of price, you look at inflation, the $10,000 to $15,000 don't really take you far.
No.
I mean, but let's just say if we look at paint and painting a structure, you may be $5,000 to $7,000 and doing it right and dealing with waterproofing. But then what are you going to do with the other $7,000 or $3,000? You're just going to replace a window. I think that it has to be reasonable for a particular, it has to be reasonable, but also has to be welcoming to a homeowner to want to apply for it and go through the process. And I think that once you start limiting yourself, and then, but also keep in mind that if we have 40 houses, all 40 homeowners are not going to apply. So you also got to look at it, that distribution may be a little bit higher when you start looking at the real applicants that are going to apply. And I think that if you're going to make a contribution, it needs to be a worthwhile contribution that makes everybody want to basically do the right thing, to improve, to basically to invest that dollar in their improvements.
Mr. Chair, thank you for that. You know, this is the first time the city of Opa-locka, and certainly I am the first city manager to put dollars toward historic home preservation. So this is just the start. I will throw as much money as this as I possibly can because I believe in this, which is also why I'm probably the first, to my understanding, the first city manager to actually attend the health board meeting. So I support what the vision of this board is, and I am requesting that we lock arms on whatever value that we can. Now, right now, the allocation is $100,000. So if we have 40 homes that we're looking at with $100,000, we obviously can't give, each home, $20,000. I'm looking to pull down another $250,000 if possible, but that money is not there yet. So I'm asking that we make some allocations based on the revenue stream that we have allocated, that this administration, my administration has allocated, so that we can provide some support. And I think that's a great start for a city that's been here for 96 years to never have provided any of the homeowners of these historic homes, which is the largest block of historic of Morris architecture in the United States. I want to provide some incentive rather than provide nothing. So we're going to do what we can. As I said, I'm looking to pull down another $250,000 to provide to the owners of historic homes. $100,000 is just the start. So I'm requesting that this board make some allocations to those homes based on that $100,000.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just piggyback off of the manager's statement. Board member Brown did mention, working with Fort Lauderdale and the CRA. And it's unfortunate that a majority of our historic properties are not within the CRA boundaries. So to be able to look at that as another funding source is not something that's available to us at this point in time.
Mr. Chair, do we have a expiration date that we need to spend the $100,000? Is there something that we need to kind of look at a projection? Hey, if we need to spend it by this date in order to re-up for the $250,000, do we need to look at how we expedite or how do we strategize as it relates to make sure that we meet that goal? So that when we ask for more, that is not, hey, I'm not going to give you more because you didn't spend the initial investment.
Thank you, Board Member Brown. This is government dollars, so I would like for this to be a permanent line item. And how do we achieve that? By spending all that we have. So my request is that for the $100,000 that we disseminate that to the homes as judiciously and expeditiously as we can, so that I have a reason to go back with the budget in 2023, 2024 and say we need another $100,000. That would be my request of this board.
Mr. Chair. Mr. City Manager, has the city talked to any banks about helping to finance these restorations? I believe that banks are required to put a certain amount of money into low income kinds of housing with lower interest rates. And if there's a local bank in town, or even a branch of a big bank, we should certainly talk to them.
Thank you, Board Member Francis. Yes, my administration has spoken with 4 banks, and historic home preservation is not generally a line item that they finance. They do have affordable homes programs, but most of our historic homes are not considered as such. And in fact, once our historic homes are fully restored, the value of all of these homes will far exceed the value of the homes that they usually consider for affordable housing.
One other thing I'd like to mention, we spoke previously about having guidelines for restoration. I've been in touch with a friend of mine who is a professional city planner and who does just that. And she has most recently done the plan for Little Havana, which gives the guidelines of the various types of architecture that exist in the city. I contacted her and asked if she would be interested in doing something for Opa-locka. She would be. She thinks it's an exciting place, but she does cost money. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind, put her together with you and let her tell you what she does for how much. I would think it's a critical base expense, one that should come almost before restoration starts, because it should tell people what kind of window, what kind of door jamb, what kind of minaret that they can do. If they do it right the first time, it's a whole lot better than repeating. So I will send you her information and hope that you will follow up with her and see if it's a possibility. The company is called Plus Serbia, and they've done a lot of work in Miami-Dade County. They did Overtown, and I think they do a great job here.
Thank you, Board Member McIntyre. Is she looking for permanent employment or is this a contract opportunity? Okay, because we are looking for we do have a permanent a vacancy and opening for city planner with the city of Opa-locka.
No, this is strictly a contract job.
Okay.
Board Member McIntyre, I want to thank you for that question specifically. But before I get to it, I would just want to call out some of the words from Mr. Gay and Mr. Williams. This really is a campaign to save Opa-locka. And by that, I mean, we have a historic inventory in the either registered or not 50+ homes that are unique and original to the fabric of the city's history. And we are long proud of this designation of being able to say highest concentration of Moorish revival, which is fantastic. And I've said this in previous meetings, and I mean it with great sincerity. As they currently stand, these homes do not retain many of the features, whether it be a window, the type of roof, the parapets, et cetera, that make them that way. Just because they still stand and they're shells of what they once were does not necessarily make them true to form as it relates to the designation of Moorish aesthetic. The reason I wanted to call out what you had said in terms of guidelines is that I would ask staff to prioritize this as an immediate item. Much like any other preservation board or city that takes preservation to the utmost importance in their procedures with regards to building and permits, there's always an original elevation drawing or picture next to the proposed work that comes before the board. Understandably, and just, objectively, that's not been done with these homes, either for lack of resource information, whatever the case might be. We're very fortunate in 2022 going into next year and having this incredible conversation related to Campaign to Save and any grant monies that come from the city or other sources. We're very blessed to be able to have the majority of elevation drawings for these homes. And in absence of 2 to 5 that might not exist for homes that are registered or soon to be registered, we kind of know the essence of these homes and can create a guideline per. So when it comes to a contractor, and I'm glad you brought this up, I had a conversation with Melissa Wiley, who's the president of the Florida Trust, who was actually going to help me identify grants that could pay for someone like who you've proffered to do this work. I do encourage and I do ask that the guidelines book that is uniquely developed for an Opa-locka, which obviously the contractor will take responsibility for, be tailored to each one of the structures. Unlike many other cities who, because of poor record keeping or an abundance of historic homes that very much mirror one to another, every single home in Opa-locka has a unique design to it, and we have the majority of those plans. So the guidelines booklet needs to reflect that so that the board and staff can act with some level of informed and educated take on what was originally intended for these buildings. The roofing materials, the windows, understandably, there's some cost prohibitiveness to some of those decisions, but if we're going to get serious about enforcing some of these permits being proffered and pushed through, then we need to set a framework of what that's going to look like for those who are proud enough to own these homes. So again, I would ask that the guidelines aspect of our goal setting and our timelines for 2023 be at the top of that list, because before we start giving money out, we need to know that it's for very specific purposes. And on the back end, when we identify what monies are going to what property owner who's applied, I think that we need to suggest and have a recommendation of what that already looks like based on the current condition of these properties. So if we're dealing with and we're focusing on, I believe it's 26 residences as of now that have a designated status, not including the ones that will, but the ones that we're working with, then I think it's easy enough to go one by one and identify what curbside changes need to be made to really make them authentic and how we would be proud to see them from a preservation/restoration standpoint. So I thank you for proffering the name. It'd be nice to act on that and to also find monies that help to pay for it, the same way that Coral Gables did. Their entire guidelines book was paid for through a couple grants that have been established some years ago. And to Board Member Brown, thank you for your comments and questions about timelines on the monies to be spent. I think that will greatly inform how aggressive we can be to really push forward our preservation agenda for 2023, which is why understandably we just met about a month ago to have this workshop, but really getting a hardline timeline of what some of our objectives look like would really behoove our efforts and keep us on track. A part of that, of course, as we discussed at the last meeting, are the plaques. And to that point, I was curious to know how we can proceed in terms of making a decision on what we're actually going to be working with. Are we looking to create an entirely new design, or are we going to work with what we already have on these buildings? My suggestion, I don't know how the board members feel, is to go with a completely new, refreshed design. If it's a ceramic, if it's a metal form, whatever that case might look like, just so that we know, since designation and the plaque process and ceremoniousness is so much a part of what we want to do for next year. I think we need to kind of have in place an action item of what we collectively decide we want to do, what we like staff support with. So I don't know what you guys feel about that, just in regards to this larger conversation of restoration and preservation.
Second that
Okay.
makes.
Well, I think the plaques should be getting out as soon as possible. And the cost to do that is not that much. I would think we could do it for $330,000, $3,000. And I'm thinking of just a simple ceramic plaque like I have on my house in Coral Gables. But do it with a ceremony, as you say, Alex. Maybe take 5 at a time and go from each house and award the plaque and have a little reception. Because you want to make the homeowners feel good about what they're doing. It's real special. And a lot of them do anyway, which is what's causing them to take care of the house. Like Alex, they take care of the house because they love it. So I think as soon as we can get that program going, we should. If you'd like, I will attempt to find a ceramicist and get a design and a quote. And then we could go from there. Also, I want to mention, go back to the guidelines development. Meg McLaughlin, who runs Plus Serbia, gave me a ballpark figure of 25,000, which I think is pretty reasonable. It probably will be a little less because Opa-locka is not that big. You can hear me, right? Any comment on that?
I do have a comment about your suggestion of immediately acting on plaques. So first it would be to identify a ceramicist, a designer to do it. But I love what you said about 5 at a time, because if we have 25, 26 to work with, then we could very sequentially roll those out throughout next year. In addition to that, and followed by perhaps announce this campaign to save in the form of the applications that could come for the grants that the city is able to provide, as well as start creating and fostering that community of historic homeowners to be aware of future financial opportunities that have been identified by this board, but also the administration. How could we best proceed? This is to staff as far as having this conversation about plaques, the design. Do we want to work with the person that's done Coral Gables? Is that money part of the 100,000 or separate from?
I was thinking of contacting the Ceramic League of Miami and telling them what our project is and seeing if anybody would like to bid on doing it.
Well, I would like to state that any expenditure you make will be from the lump sum. So the more money that you spend on contractors would be the less money that would be available to residents and
I'm sorry,
homeowners.
say that again.
The more money that you spend on contractors and other expenses will be the less money that you have to provide to homeowners. Okay.
So what I've also, I'm sorry, if I may. So there's a town that's in Georgia, that's basically, they're well known for their historic houses and structures. And what they've done in the past is they've put signs in front of the homes, and each house has a number. So what happens is when you go to their website, you can go by each number. And that particular website provides you with a little bit of historical data in the year that it was built. So basically, the oldest house will obviously be building number 1, and then 2, and then 3. So that's how they categorize and kind of organize their particular historical homes. So this may be something that we can kind of piggyback on or use as a reference as we start to go down this road of trying to figure out how we give recognition, but also provide information to people that may not know about Opa-locka and or the Moore style homes.
Absolutely love that idea.
I love that idea too. I love the digital component as well, because to each one of these homes, some more than others, but they're all part of this fabric I mentioned. They all have a story to tell, and it's kind of limited when you just see a plaque. You kind of want to know a little bit more about that house and the story behind it. So I'm all in favor of what that could look like and connect it to perhaps the city's site or another organization that would take ownership of what that program would look like. So yeah, thank you for that. And just for the record, the city of Coral Gables, I appreciate the ceramic institution, but the city of Coral Gables and their preservation department uses red herring pottery at 9170 Southwest 95th Avenue. And their cost per order, not including the mold, of course, is about $30. So again, depending on what the custom design would look like and the quantity, I'd be curious to know what ballpark they would be doing for us, but just to kind of narrow in and try to get a more finite example of what we can work with. This is what they work with to provide plaques like the one that you have on your home.
Mr. Chair, in light of the late hour, and I'm not sure if there is any more discussion in relationship to the workshop and some other ideals in relationship to that, I would like to move forward with the consideration of the resolutions. Due to the fact that we do not have quorum, there is an opportunity where through the city manager's office, the recommendations of staff can be moved forward to be presented to the city commission for their consideration. Because we do not have an opportunity to vote on any particular item at this particular time, it would be my recommendation that we would go in that particular process where the items that have been brought forth for considerations, which is the resolution 1 and 2, that we will move those particular items forward and they will be presented before the city commission at the next most opportune time.
So is it a simple yes? Do we have to vote on that decision, or is it?
You really can't make a decision on it.
Okay,
It's.
so you're just
basically-
informing the board
We're
that this is
informing the
how it's
board that
gonna.
we're gonna have to make an administrative move in order to move these particular items forward, for they will be considered by the city commission.
Understandable.
This is something that we did once before when the Historic Preservation Board was dormant at that time, where we would have staff recommendations presented before the city manager, and then the item will be moved forward before the city commission for their consideration.
Understandable.
So due to the fact that you do not have a quorum, we will move these particular items forward in that particular light.
Understandable. Understand the process. Is there any opportunity, even with this circumvention, for the board to make any comment on this? Not in terms of any voting capacity, but just to open it up to,
I believe public comments can be made just from a general perspective, but not
right,
necessarily speaking to these specific items, but.
right. I just wanted to give the board an opportunity, just in case, there was an interest
Madam
to,
Attorney? Could you weigh on whether the board can make commentary on the resolutions?
Well, you would need to be taking public comment, and anyone that wants to make any type of comments regarding any items or regarding historic environmental preservation, they may do so.
so we can open up for public comment?
Yes.
Okay, great. With that being said, public comment is now open in regards to the two resolutions on tonight's agenda. And that I assume is open to the board members as well from their seating.
Chair, may I? I just want to state on the record before we move forward, I didn't receive any comments or feedbacks as well on the items virtually for resolution 1 or 2. Just want to say it on the record. Thank you.
So if any of the attendees would like to make a commentary on, make a commentary to the public regarding the reasons why you're here, now is your time to do so. Please step up to the podium to discuss.
Any,
Does the board have any commentary? Mr. Chair?
board members?
So as it relates,
The commentary would need to come from the public, so because it's just a public comment. Just wanted to clarify that.
Good evening.
I've been doing Opa-locka 15 years.
I'm sorry, Chair. Could he please speak in the mic and please state his name, please, clearly? Thank you.
Sure, my name is Armando Perez, on behalf of Arma Morales. She's the owner of the house. I'm her husband, and we've been there almost 10 or 15 years. We tried to do this window change and the windows and the doors. Oh, we need a permit to do it, and that's what we're here. That's all.
This is in regards to
11:45.
11:45.
Yeah.
11:45.
Well, seeing that we can't vote on it and it seems to be going that direction for,
Well, Mr. Chair?
yes.
Thank you so much for coming, and we apologize that the board is not able to vote on it. However, the city manager's office will move your item forward for you, sir.
Okay, they're going to say yes?
That's with the recommendation of the staff, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And on behalf of the board, we were just going to say, well, I would like to say thank you for what you're doing to your home. It's a beautiful structure. It's one of the unique designs to the city. So again, even though we're not voting on it, you already heard from staff as far as what their intention is to recommend and push it forward. So thank you for protecting our history with your property.
Thank you.
Second,
Any other public comments? All right, public comments are now closed.
Mr. Chair, we're at the point where if the board wants to make any comments, item 10.
Yes. Board members?
yes, so
Mr.
what we're
Chair,
gonna, oh, go ahead, ma'am. I'm sorry.
I'd like it put on the record and in the minutes that it is important for board members to attend. When we don't have a quorum, we put the city manager, community development officer, and the citizens at great disservice by not being able to provide what we're supposed to as a historic preservation board. Please make every effort to attend. And if you cannot, resign so someone else can take your place.
Second that.
I'd like to follow up with that also and thank the city manager, Mr. Gaines, and citizens that came out. Again, I'd love to apologize to you guys that we do not have a forum to vote on your beautification that you're doing to our great city. And moving forward, I'll second that also, that we have to have the forum because everybody takes time out of their day to make sure that this board is taken care of, and we need to be diligent on this because it's a
And I even-
service that's going to be done.
I even come in my wheelchair dragging my oxygen.
And it's a great service for the community that we can help them accomplish what we can to move this historic board forward. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Board Member Brown, any comments?
I had a comment and I was listening and I forgot it. I'll be honest with you.
It's okay.
Come back to me.
That's fine. I do have a comment. Since we do have some of the homeowners here within the space tonight, thank you so much for joining us regardless of our quorum status. I, as a fellow historic homeowner on Jan Avenue, I'm really excited at what 2023 is going to look like, not just because of the respective improvements you're making and to anyone that might be watching virtually, but I would love to ignite and foster a closer relationship among historic homeowners themselves, to share some of the challenges, but also the great opportunities of owning these beautiful buildings. Your house, for instance, the Shook residence, I'm sure has some great history, not just since you've owned it, but from years prior. And I would love for the historic board meetings to serve as a forum or perhaps as a separate city event where we could invite you to a public setting and share a little bit about your history with Opa-locka, as well as the home that you've taken pride in owning. So in addition to all the great discussions that are occurring, very preliminarily speaking, about grants, new plaques that us as homeowners can proudly wear on our homes' facades. The manager had said this in brief, but this really is a historic moment for Opa-locka. And since 1926, I'm not sure that there's been a concerted effort to restore, let alone just maintain and rehabilitate, but to restore these homes to how they should look, how it was intended by the architect and the city's founder. So I want to thank once more to the city manager and staff for your commitment to this board. Regardless of quorum status tonight, we and others believe in these efforts, and we so appreciate it because this is newsworthy, and this is something to get excited about. All of us are part of this vision, so I really look forward to more on timelines and kind of a forecast of what 2023 is going to look like to really tackle this and see how this board can help to support these efforts as well. Board Member Brown, I turn it back to you in case it came to mind.
So I'm going to second what you just said. I agree with everything that you have just iterated. And I think that as we continue to move forward and we also look into 2023, I think it's nothing but opportunity and an opportunity to serve our community and the city of Opa-locka. I think that the strides that we've made thus far are definitely a leap in the right direction. We just have to continue to bring these different pieces together in order to bring a whole. And the reason why I say that is as I look at the items that were discussed at the workshop, I think we got to take select items implement it, and then go to the next select items, implement it as we move forward. And I think that that's going to be the key strategy as we move forward with regards to this. So definitely. And again, thank you to everyone for attending.
Thank you, board member. Last comment that I have to make. Thursday, January 26th, I would like for staff to schedule, if this is okay, to be suggestive in the sense for staff to make sure that we have a meeting on that day. Once again, Thursday, January 26th, and there's a great reason behind it. I have been in touch with, as has our CRA manager, Corianne Delane, have been in touch with Clearly Larklin of the University of Florida, as well as Associate Professor and PhD Preservation Specialist Linda Stevenson. Between the two of them, and apologies, I forgot to mention, Clearly Larkin is the Director of the Historic Preservation Program at UF in Gainesville. So a little context there, but Thursday, January 26th embarks an exciting new activity for their students to be able, and there's about 20 or so of them that are going to be visiting the city of Opa-locka. And during the course of that weekend, from that day going into Sunday, they're going to be using the city to their educational benefit by doing a comprehensive historic inventory of the city. So staff and many archives have long held lists and inventories that were conducted in the early 80s by Emily Perry. Every 20 to 30 or more years, cities with historic districts, thematic areas like ours, undergo historic inventories. We are very fortunate that the University of Florida, Clearly her students and Linda Stevenson are going to be tackling this for us as a city. So they're going to be going house to house, street by street, and they're going to be identifying all the homes that are designated, all the homes that are not and should be, as well as part of this inventory process is to document their condition. This comes at an ideal time for our larger discussions about grants and restoration opportunities because they're going to be instrumental in helping to deliver information in a packaged and formalized way about where we stand as a historic area in 2023. So by request, Linda Clearly have asked to be able to come and present on January 26th, and for their students, it might even be the fullest house this board has ever had, perhaps, but they would like to actually attend our meeting, and that is the day that they arrive in the city, and that is the weekend that they're going to be here to commence their work. So again, just to conclude, I would like for there to be a meeting, if possible, Thursday, January 26th. That way, the board members and staff have an opportunity of looking at the faces of our historic inventory future and the bright minds behind it. Thank you.
Board Chair. I'd like to request that the members consider bringing to a vote an amendment to the bylaws that will allow personnel to only miss 3 meetings in a calendar or fiscal year rather than 3 consecutive meetings. That is a request.
I would be in support of that, but we can't vote on that, right?
No, it had to be brought once you have quorum
Correct.
by one of the members.
You could split me in two and you probably do it that way.
I fully support that. So I guess perhaps at the next discussion when we do have quorum. No final comments from the board. Well, thank you so much for all who have attended virtually and in person. Thank you to staff for being here tonight and continuing our discussion and pushing forward our preservation dreams. I'd like a motion to adjourn.
Move it.
Second.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.